Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, the renowned Sufi elder, scholar, and poet, was born in Balkh in 1207 AD. Maulana composed more than 3,500 ghazals and over 2,000 rubaiyat, which are not only deeply instructive but also rich in knowledge. His famous work, Masnavi, is itself a research-based book that contains hundreds of stories. One such story is presented here. A precious pearl, a royal court was in session. Sultan Mehmood of Ghazni had arrived, and all the ministers and nobles were present. The king held a pearl in his hand and asked the royal vizier, "What do you think this pearl is worth?" The vizier examined it carefully and said, "Your Majesty, this is an extremely precious gem. In my opinion, it is worth at least a ton of gold." The sultan replied, "Very good, that's exactly what I thought. Now, break it." The vizier looked at the sultan in astonishment and, folding his hands, said, "How can I break such a precious pearl? I am here to safeguard your wealth, not destroy it." The sultan responded, "I am pleased with your loyalty." A little later, the sultan handed the same pearl to the deputy vizier and asked for its value. The vizier humbly said, "Your Majesty, I am unable to estimate its worth." The sultan then ordered, "Break it." The vizier hesitated and began to wonder why the sultan wanted to break such a rare gem. He admired the pearl's beauty and brilliance, saying, "Your Majesty, look at its glow and splendor. Its light outshines the sun. How can I, as the guardian of your royal treasures, destroy such a valuable thing?" The sultan praised his wisdom and then gave the pearl to a few other officials, ordering them to break it. They, too, refused, offering similar excuses. The sultan rewarded each of them for their loyalty and devotion, praising them for their sincerity. Meanwhile, others in the court, seeing this, also considered themselves loyal guardians of the king's wealth. In moments of trial, those who hesitate become thorns in the path. Finally, the sultan gave the pearl to Ayaz, his trusted servant, and asked him about its worth. Ayaz replied, "Your Majesty, it is indeed priceless." The sultan then ordered, "Now, break it." Without hesitation, Ayaz immediately shattered the pearl into pieces. His quick obedience surprised everyone in the court, who gasped in disbelief. Ministers and nobles exclaimed, "You fool! How could you break such a precious gem without a second thought?" Hearing this, Ayaz calmly replied, "O noble ones, tell me, is the value of the pearl greater, or is the sultan's command more important in your eyes? You admired the pearl's brilliance and beauty, but you forgot the one who gave the order. It is foolish to prioritize a mere stone over the royal command." When Ayaz revealed this truth, the court's ministers and nobles were struck with shame and remorse. No one dared to lift their heads in front of the sultan. They tried to explain their loyalty but admitted they had neglected the importance of the royal decree. The sultan then said, "You considered breaking this ordinary stone more significant than obeying my command. For this disobedience, you must face the consequences." The sultan ordered the royal executioner to behead the disobedient ministers. As the ministers trembled with fear, Ayaz felt compassion for their plight. He humbly approached the sultan and said, "O merciful one, please forgive them. Their negligence and ignorance are punishment enough. Your displeasure is far worse for them than any pearl. Your grace weighs heavily upon them, and their realization of their mistake has humbled them. Please, pardon them." The sultan accepted Ayaz's request and forgave everyone. Maulana Rumi concludes, Ayaz saw beyond the outward brilliance of the pearl and prioritized the royal command. This made him close to the king. The ministers and nobles, however, became mesmerized by the pearl's beauty and ignored the royal decree. Similarly, people often forget the true essence, the Almighty, and get lost in worldly distractions, which ultimately leads to nothing but failure and loss.